Brendan Rodgers was sending out messages to his own players at the weekend, which is not good enough, won't tolerate it, get your fingers out. Because he wants to end the season on a high. As Mick said after that game, you know, what Celtic can't afford to have is the dullest, most miserable funeral march to a treble in the history of Scottish football. They deserve more than that. They've worked really hard to put themselves in this position. They deserve to go out with all guns blazing, wrap up the title in style, win the Scottish Cup, and put 3 trophies back in the cabinet. That's what they deserve from the season. And what Brendan Rodgers was doing, in my view, was just reminding some of these players this isn't going to be acceptable. Mm-hmm. What he also very subtly threw into his complaint was that these are problems that he'll address in the summer. So I think what he's saying there is, look guys, I'll be going nowhere. I'm not sure you'll be hanging around, but I'll be back. And I think there's an element of that because you do see Celtic fans, and Michael has brought this up previously, that he's got 1 year left in his contract. Is he getting itchy feet? Are we getting another Leicester scenario? And I think that Brendan Rodgers is sending out Morse Code messages there. I'll be going nowhere. Mm-hmm. Whether or not you're staying around for the ride, well, that's now up to me to determine. But you need to raise your levels between now and the end of the season. And I think that, I put it this way, I think that message will have landed firmly where he wanted it to land. Yeah. The players will get it, the fans will get it, and he'll maybe light a fire in a few bellies. Because I think there's a bit of an overreaction, if I'm honest, among some Celtic supporters. You know, there's a lot of gnashing of teeth here, and where's this going wrong? And that's what I was trying to say earlier. Look, there is no need to panic. Mm-hmm. The league is in the bag. You will win the Scottish Cup. There will be a treble to celebrate, and Brendan Rodgers will take the team forward again next season. But that's why there's no need to panic, because they've got Brendan Rodgers. This doesn't go unnoticed. He's sent out all the right messages. He's the experienced guy. He's been over the course and distance. You'll see a reaction from Celtic from here on in, and it'll probably be exactly the reaction that Brendan Rodgers had in his mind's eye when he took a wee minute to compose himself before working out exactly what message he sent out at McDermott Park in the aftermath of that game.
Mick, as Keith says, there's plenty of kind of upset Celtic fans, and let me read a few comments to you before I bring you in. Hoopsaholic says they took their foot off the gas long before Christmas. Actually thought it'd come from Brendan after a frantic first few months. This one here from Gilbert, he says, we've dropped 14 points so far in 2025 and we'd be in serious danger of an historic title capitulation if there were any team worthy of competing with us.
Yeah, no, but there's not, and that's the point. The point is that Rangers are in no fit state, and that mentally, I don't care who you are, you're a human being. It's very difficult to recreate that extra edge, that adrenaline rush that you need when you know you're going fighting tooth and nail against somebody else. Celtic don't have that, and you can't artificially create it. Even Brendan Rodgers can't do that. He could do many, many things, but he can't artificially recreate how that feels and the extra edge it gives. So, yes, I hear all this, and it is true that they are losing points, but they're still 13 points clear, and the players know that. And Brendan Rodgers, I think, his messaging there was just, look, guys, we all know that you've taken the foot off the gas. Let's do something about that between now and the end of the season.
Well, John points out, Mick, if the points gap are closer to the top of the table, Celtic went to higher gears. The lack of challenge at the top is part of it. Marzuno says, huge overreaction. We had 9 shots on target straight at the goalie. All those chances had to be created. And Craigie comes back at you, Keith, says, Scottish Cup win is not guaranteed, Keith. Show respect to the other clubs still in the Cup.
I don't need to show respect. My job is to have an opinion, and I'm telling you that, in my opinion, Celtic win this treble. And come back to me. Who was it?
That was Craigie.
Right, Craigie, come back to me at the end of the season if I'm wrong, and you can point that out. And I will apologise to you. But right now, they're a shoe-in for the treble.
I kind of agree with the point the guy made about that. If the gap wasn't as big, would they have dropped these points in 3 games, 3 defeats in 6 games? I'm not so sure. I can't say with any definite, but I don't think so. I think there's a definite. I don't think it's an intentional taking the foot off the gas. I think it's more a mental thing,
subconscious.
I also think, I know you know how Brendan Rodgers works, and he does motivate his side in different ways. He sets them targets, and I think he was getting in his mind that I think we got to Christmas. I think he would have been thinking about another invincible season. And at that point, he'd only dropped 2 draws in the first 21 games. They went to Ibrox. I think at that point, it hadn't got to the point yet it was relevant to ask the question just yet. because it was still 16, 17 games to go. But when that went, something kind of went from the balloon a wee bit. And then after kind of Munich, there's definitely been a bit of something missing with Celtic, but that gap's remained all the way through. So the lack of jeopardy has taken the edge off them. There's no doubt about it. And I think also, which is another factor, is that the squad is Celtic. The last 3 or 4 years, the squad's been huge, right? 30 odd players. This year it's quite light, and they're relying on the same guys week in, week out to do the business. And I think it has taken its toll on these guys. And they've done it pretty much. You go back to kind of January last year and the kind of sprint for the line last year, then the start of this year. They've had 12 months of the same guys week in, week out producing the goods. Guys like your Dyson Madas and your Coons, McGregor, Carter Vickers, Alistair Johnson. They've been at it every single week. And there's been a bit of a drop-off, and maybe it was inevitable because, a lot of talk about squad rotation. You look at the bench against Rangers the other week when they lost at Celtic Park, it was very light. I know there are a couple of injuries, but it's not a massive squad packed full of in-depth quality, really. And I think that's what he's talking about this summer. I think he'll want more in terms of pushing for the starting 11, but also in the squad to give himself a chance that he can maybe rotate a bit more and have guys that he can come in and rely on and not have to kind of send out the same guys week in, week out. Here's a Dyson Maida, who's, by the way, had a bad game at the weekend, but he's been amazing pretty much all season.
It's the first time his batteries look to be running low.
Well, at some point he'll hit the wall because he does 2 jobs a game, basically. I mean, at the moment he plays centre forward, and then when Jota tires after an hour, he goes into the wing, does another job. So he's not getting the break after an hour he used to get in this Celtic historically in the last 4 or 5 years. The attacking players do the job for an hour, then get replaced with other guys. Not happening at the moment. Clearly, Brendan Rodgers not really fancying Adam Ida at the moment. For whatever reason, he's not really fancying him, so he's not getting starts. He's getting bare minimum minutes in the pitch. Even at the weekend, they were chasing a goal. He came on, didn't really do an awful lot either. So it means a lot of the same guys are getting hammered every week. You look at Kuhn, his form's dipped big time. But it might be that these guys are starting to run in fumes a wee bit. So they're running in fumes and have no jeopardy.
The one thing that I'm more going along the lines of the lack of jeopardy, because I think if you rewind and you watch these shows back at the start of the season, we were probably all talking about what a strong squad Brendan Rodgers had put together now, because he was able to bring in players of quality. He was able to sign players at £11 million. He did have options all over the midfield, and Engels and Paulo Bernardo and McCown to come in when you've got already your Hitatis and Callum McGregors. I think every single one of us would have said at the start of the season, this is starting to look like the sort of squad that Brendan Rodgers had in his own mind. Yeah. With increased quality all over the place, and this ability, and we've mentioned it I don't know how many times, the ability to make changes, to drop players in and out without a drop-off in the quality, which wasn't there the previous season. So I don't know how many times we can keep going back to the same well, Mick, and saying the squad's not big enough.
Well, I think in terms of quality, I think the lack of a striker in January was
that's
nonsense.
Bad planning, though.
That was nonsense, really. I mean, letting Kyogo go with no replacement lined up or over the line was crazy. And I think they are feeling the effect of that now a wee bit. And it's a lot of burden put on Maida's shoulders. I think, obviously, the left back issue, we kind of thought there might be a chance of them getting Tierney in at some point. They bring in Jeffrey Sloop. It's been okay. I mean, it wasn't great at the weekend. I don't think he's set the heather on fire, really. I still think Greg Taylor's a better player in terms of what he brings to that team. I think I can understand why he's not in the team at the moment, because obviously he's kind of seen out his contract, and maybe that's viewed as a kind of a negative in terms of his. I'm not saying his work rate desire, but he's worried about half an eye on the future, which is obviously natural if you're on your way out. The next contract is very important for him, but I'd still play Greg Taylor.
Jeffrey Sloop's in the same position, Mick.
Yeah, he is. But I just think Greg Taylor.
He's a free agent man without a contract at the end of the season.
But Greg Taylor's been a serial winner for 6 years.
Yeah. So I find that a bit curious myself.
Yeah, I think Taylor would be my choice of fullback, even if it's getting regarding the situation. I mean, Sloop's playing for his future as well, I suppose. Whether it's a Celtic or somewhere else, I think he'll be all right no matter what. I think, will Celtic take him a permanent deal? I don't see it myself. I think it's too much money for what he brings. decent enough, but a lot of money for a kind of backup. I know there's also we talk about Kieran Tierney's how many games he can play throughout the season, but I think he might surprise some people. But yeah, I think there's work to be done. I think Rodgers knows that as well. There's still work. He mentioned it the summer, which means he knows there is work to be done in the summer. And they need to do it quick this year because they've got a qualifier end of August. So they can't do their usual hanging about to the last week in August to make signings. They have to be in the building for as quick as possible. That means pre-season training, bedding them in, get them organised. This mucking about to the last few days of the window isn't going to cut it this year because that qualifier is arguably the biggest game of next season.
Let me hit you both with a few more comments from Celtic fans. Plenty to get in touch, and please do so if you want to get involved in the conversation. We spent almost £30 million on Engels, Ida and Trusty, and you could argue all three simply aren't good enough. I'm worried about the idea of handing Rodgers another war chest